first, no one knew why the pub had closed. But drama spread like mustard in our small town, and by the time the doors reopened, our lips were sealed tight with the 3-day-old squeals that we'd heard about at midnight, the bleating kids clutching their rucksacks tight while Mike from the bike shop had lifted the boot up, told the landlord it was over, he'd been keeping her cooped up, and she'd squawked in the moonlight, she'd flapped amidst her flight. Her shrill voice had insisted that she was tired of this life, tired of all the fights, tired of telling lies, and so her tyres told the truth across the tarmac out of sight. And when we went back into that bar, we were just so surprised to see the landlord still there, his shirt ironed, his smile in place. He was chuckling over pints as though now he owned the place, and with those eyebrows and cheeks shaking, you could have been mistaken for thinking that he was happy. Except this huge wall display of olives that had always been behind him was now gone. These green and black jars that had dominated the bar space, where she had swooped in and replaced the scratchings, the pickled eggs, all those uncouth snacks with olives instead, well, now those jars were sacked from the back bar, and although we'd heard he'd said nothing as she drove off in that car, in the calmness of his surrender, those olives had been his only scalp. He'd ripped them out, let out one last desperate masculine shout by replacing them with pork pies. And like some corkscrew crusade of a desperate vessel, he sank safe in this fort of brown, crusty testicles. And so, yeah, he did seem the same, except for those fatty sentries that sat watching him wish for those long-lost years back, and he never, ever grumbled. He never once mentioned the kids, but every Friday, when he'd offer us a pie to go with our pint, it'd smart a bit, as though somewhere at the heart of it, the meat was still aching. Some pain you can't just bandage with gelatin and pastry.
What's the food like in heaven? If all well-behaved living things that die go to heaven, can there be meat up there? Do people imagine eating nice bits of meat in heaven? You know, the bits with a tiny bit of burnt on the cliff face of fat.